Hey there, Summoners! Welcome back to our channel. Hope your grind is going well. My name is Nathan Ng, and I'll be your host for the 11.22 mid-patch update. This video quickly covers and reviews the various balance changes from this patch, but more importantly, updates our 5 tier lists based on the results of balance shifts and meta. It's been an interesting patch, and we've had some hot fixes implemented in the middle of it, which I'll go over as well. Make sure you hit that sub button, and let's go ahead and begin the update. With the small buff to Gore Drinker, plenty of champions who fell short last patch are making a smooth recovery on this one. One excellent example of this is Riven. Her win rate rapidly sunk but have been seeing incredible strides this patch. With a small damage buff and a giant buff to her E-shield, Riven is a much stronger laner as well as skirmisher in the later stages of the game. With the AD to shield scaling increasing by 20%, Riven is much more durable than before and has seen her win rate break the 50% mark once again this patch. Our analysts moved her into the A tier and are happy with the readjustment that they made to her placement. The other top laner that was buffed this patch was Renekton. Reverting his stun to its previous state has started a giant surge in his play rate and increase in his win rate. Overnight, his win rate shot up to 48%, which may not sound that good, but what if I told you it was 44% at the end of 11.22? It's a huge buff, and he's back up to the A tier in this update. Although his play rate remains low, Maokai has seen his win rate decrease by 3%. His nerfs this patch, which we'll talk about later, were intended to take away strength from his off role, but instead hit him harder as a solo laner. That said, Tahm Kench and Camille sit comfortably at the top of the tier list this patch. While there was that compensation buff for Gore Drinker users, the item is still comparatively weaker than before. Dealing insane damage without it or Conqueror, Camille and Tahm Kench remain dominant as they haven't seen any big nerfs in the recent patches. Their high damage output and oppressive power in lane allow them to dictate the laning phase and snowball hard with early leads. Another pick worth mentioning is Poppy. She remains the underrated power pick of this patch. Not only does she sport a low play rate, she's also finding a considerable amount of success in the top lane. Don't underestimate her damage output. It's there, and she obviously brings a ridiculous amount of utility as well. As we move forward, I want to quickly shout out our incredible coaching staff over at ProGuides.com. If you're struggling to make that final climb, contact one of them. They're great, and we've helped hundreds of students climb entire ranked tiers with their help. Concluding with the top lane, our OP tiers include Camille, Tahm Kench, and Teemo, followed up by Irelia, Mordekaiser, Nasus, Jax, Malphite, Shen, Mundo, Set, Singed, Quinn, Aatrox, Poppy, Darius, and Fiora in the S tier. Next, we have the jungle. Vi. Before following up on the balance changes, we do have to talk about a hotfix that went live after the initial patch. She actually received some quality of life changes to make her more consistent this patch. This led to an unexpected gain in power and actually pushed her performance over the top, prompting the urgent need for a hotfix. Her base armor per level was reduced by 1, AD per level by 0.5, and stun duration by 1/10 of a second. Where she currently stands, Vi is still more competent and deserves a spot in the S tier. Moving forward, there's Graves. He was subject to bigger nerfs this patch as his crit damage has been lowered. Although Graves scaling isn't as impactful as before, he remains a critical threat at all stages of the game. In spite of the nerf, he's still powerful in the late game. The nerf made him weaker, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't count him out. Our analysts overreacted to the nerf and have moved him back up to the OP tier in this update. Kha'Zix is next as he received a giant nerf to his Q. So far, it's had a severe impact on his performance. While our analysts did move him down from the OP tier at the start of this patch, they're bumping him down one more. With the scaling on the ability reduced so much, it's unsurprising that his win rate has dropped. The big final buff this patch was for Kayn. After struggling to cope with the system nerfs this patch, Riot stepped in and gave his darkened form some massive damage buffs, which is interesting because I still see Assassin Kayn being played all the time. As expected, he's performing great after them and deserves his placement in the S tier. Qiyana also received some nerfs that we'll talk about shortly in the mid lane section. However, I'll let you know that her jungle win rate has decreased by 1% this patch, and because of them, our analysts are re-evaluating her placement. We'll let the patch play out and see how she performs, but her current 46% win rate in high elo is definitely lackluster. At the moment, Elise continues to perform well. AP junglers are trending heavily in Korea with picks like Nidalee and Karthus as well. While this doesn't have a big impact on the jungle, it does impact the solo lane meta quite a bit. As always, an AP jungler allows mid laners to pick some of the strongest champions in the game, and if you're a mid-jungle duo, it might be a good time to try and learn somebody like Elise. In the OP tier for the jungle, we have Elise, Evelynn, and Graves, followed up by Fiddlesticks, Zac, Kindred, Kayn, Nocturne, Xin Zhao, Amumu, Lilia, Echo, Taliyah, Shaco, Talon, Lee Sin, and Vi in the S tier. That wraps up the jungle, and as we're moving on to the mid lane, let me go ahead and ask you our question of the day. Do you use any key bindings that you want to talk about? Personally, the only one that I changed from the default ones is that I put the trinket on T. It makes a lot of sense in my head, but let me know yours in the comments down below. In the mid lane, a couple of notorious assassins received some balance changes. Qiyana was doing too well as a jungler, which means that she needed a nerf. her power to flex into 2 impactful roles proved to be too much. Thus, she got the Diana treatment from earlier this season. Well, sort of. Her mid lane win rate has also taken a sizable hit as she lost plenty of starting health. Overall, the changes to damage haven't been played out in her favor either, and it feels like the A tier is right for her. She's a bit more exploitable early on, so hyper-aggressive lane opponents can take some chances to try to solo kill her early. Which doesn't make sense to me because I played a ranked game and the Kiana lost to Kassadin, and we lost the game. I'm over it. Anyway, Akali on the other hand received a buff. In order to compensate for some lost damage on Conqueror, her passive received a big increase in its base damage as well as scaling. The end result is terrifying as her win rate increased by a bit more than 1% this patch in high elo. For now, she remains in the A tier, but she's definitely a solid pick in the right hands. While there are clear favorites in the mid lane like Vex and Zed, the meta leaves plenty of room for niche picks to shine. Aurelion Sol, believe it or not, Rumble, and Tryndamere are surprisingly powerful picks that often go uncontested. Whether it's because they're strong, enemies like matchup experience, or a combination of both, underplayed picks are doing very well this patch. If you're unfamiliar with them, I suggest you look into the replays of their gameplay to understand when they're the strongest so you don't fall victim into a random solo kill. Especially against Tryndamere, you don't want to fall behind as a mid laner. The mid lane OP tier consists of Zed, Vex, and Yasuo, followed up by Sylas, Talon, Annie, Diana, Ahri, Yone, LeBlanc, Kassadin, Anivia, Katarina, Fizz, Uxin, and Lux in the S tier. Now let's move on and talk about the bottom lane. We'll first mention Xayah because she was also hotfix nerfed. Her last buffs were immense and she finally had her breakthrough. With the discovery of a new lethality build, she started overperforming this patch. Her win rate broke the 54% mark in high elo, and just like with Vi, Riot quickly reacted and intercepted the massive spike in power. That said, it's clear that Xayah is a great pick at the moment, and we moved her up to the S tier in light of the new build that's trending. In my rank grind, I saw this built against me and I thought it was pretty weak, and then I started playing her myself and I just don't lose games. Trust me, you guys should try this one out. Anyway, underperforming ADCs are receiving some solid buffs this patch. The first one was for Kalista, whose E received an increase in its AD ratio. With the 3% increase in her win rate, it's clear that the buffs work. She has significantly more kill pressure with the buff, and the difference between executing an enemy with her E or not is a decisive factor, as she may need the reset to immediately cast it again in a chaotic teamfight. She'll remain in the B tier, but note that this was an improvement from her previous placement. Varus was also buffed because of his low play rate and disappointing win rate. In his case, the big buff to his E has spurred a 2% win rate to the latter. While he's a much better pick than before, we still think that he belongs in the C tier for the update. One marksman that's proving himself this patch is Jhin. He's a great comfort pick for many because of his strong laning phase and low commitment to attacking an enemy. So if you have commitment issues, he might be the one for you. Since his design is essentially encouraging him to take his time repositioning between attacks, he can take some time to try to create some space between himself and the enemies that want to get up close and personal. He's performing well at all ranks, and we moved him up to the OP tier for this update. As a result, our OP picks are Jhin, Misfortune, and Vayne, followed up by Ashe, Ezreal, Samira, Ziggs, Lucian, Karthus, Jinx, and Xayah in the S tier. Finally, we'll conclude with the supports. For supports, there were a couple of nerfs included this patch. One many players look forward to was for Yuumi. Personally, I'm a huge fan of this one. So far, the effects have been drastic and her win rate has decreased by more than 1%. While previously one of the strongest enchanters, she can't provide the same amount of utility as before. In spite of this, she's still very safe and retains a spot in the S tier. Maokai received small nerfs to his W's damage as well as the base ceiling from his passive. The sad thing is that this hurt him so much more in the top lane than as a support. He continues to do well in his supposed off role, which is now his main role, and will keep him in the S tier in spite of the nerf. Two support picks that we'll be highlighting in this update are Nami and Zyra. They're performing well, and in Nami's case, it's definitely not a surprise. She's been the most popular high elo support for several patches now at this point, and for good reason. Aside from the impressive dual lane with Lucian, Nami's a great support that pairs with both AD and AP lane partners effectively. Zyra, however, has recently been performing extremely well. With the various balance changes that have been going around, she's found herself in a spot where she can perform well against a lot of popular champions. Since a lot of supports are immobile and lack the sustain to fight through Zyra's incredible poke, her win rate currently sits at an impressive 52%. In those unfortunate cases where your team is stacked with too much physical damage, definitely consider throwing Zyra into the mix. The OP support picks this patch are Blitzcrank and Amumu and Nami, followed up by Thresh, Morgana, Maokai, Zyra, Yuumi, Lulu, Sona, Leona, Lux, and Soraka in the S tier. With the support section finished, that concludes our mid-patch update. I hope you guys all enjoyed it. Let me know what you guys thought in the comments down below. Also, check out the description for a link to join our Discord community. We'd love to have you there. Finally, best of luck in your final games, and as always, you guys know the drill. Stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.